such as the COVID-19 pandemic, have made the delivery of education more challenging to teachers and learners. Education needs to be delivered in modular, online and offline distance learning, homeschool, or blended mode. In this context, teachers and learning facilitators need to cope with preparing self-learning modules, digitizing instructional materials, and finding effective ways to deliver learning to their learners either at home, at the community learning centers, or through online platforms. Let us take a look at one pedagogical strategy used in the impact learning system that is relevant to this situation. One of the instructional strategies used in the impact system is peer group learning, or PGL. In peer group learning, a peer group of 5 to 6 learners of the same grade level is formed, and a leader per group is assigned to facilitate the group activities. Peer group learning in a face-to-face session. What happens in PGL when it is done face-to-face? Please note that during times of emergencies, face-to-face sessions can only be done when allowed by the government and at all times shall follow health and safety protocols. Group members use self-learning modules, and learning takes place as they study the modules collaboratively. Initially, a learner of average or higher ability is assigned as peer group leader, who models his or her tasks to the rest of the members. This peer group leader is trained by the teacher or learning facilitator. The teacher or learning facilitator should make sure that training is done every time a new learner is assigned this role. The peer group leader is also trained on how to use the leader's book or the key to corrections at the back of the SLM, if using the SLM, which contains the answer keys to the exercises and quizzes in the module. A script has to be prepared by the teacher or learning facilitator that the peer group leader can follow. This script can be written on paper to accompany the printed leader's book. The script is what the peer group leader would read as guide during the learning session. But as the peer group leader gets used to being the group leader, the script will likely no longer be needed. Peer group learning in an online mode. Peer group learning, or PGL, is an instructional strategy that is highly applicable and adaptable to online delivery. Online platforms that foster collaboration, such as video conferencing, social media, or group chats, can be maximized for peer group learning. How do we go about implementing PGL online? First, the teacher or learning facilitator will form online groups in class and assign pupils to become members of a virtual peer group. He or she has to ensure that every group member has an electronic or printed copy of the same self-learning modules. Second, the teacher or learning facilitator will assign and train a pupil to be a group leader and explain his or her tasks. Third, the teacher or learning facilitator will set up an online group meeting for the class using a chosen video conferencing platform. The meeting or login information will be provided so that group members will be able to join the group discussion through breakout rooms. Fourth, once the online group meeting begins, the group leader will start the discussion by greeting each member and following the module contents. The teacher or learning facilitator has a very important role in conducting the online session using peer group learning. He or she will introduce the online peer group learning to set clear expectations among learners a few weeks before implementing PGL. Conduct a walkthrough orientation of the online conferencing platform that will be used for the peer group learning sessions. Ensure students are familiar with the basic controls and features of the platform, such as logging in, raising one's hand to answer a question, muting or unmuting the microphone, turning the video or camera on and off, and sharing of one's own computer screen. Make a schedule and a list of learners with regard to their assigned tasks or responsibilities. Explain to the learners how a peer group discussion will be done and how they will be graded. Ensure equal participation by allowing everyone to become a peer group leader by rotation. Check the internet connectivity of the learner, who will be assigned as the peer group leader, to ensure the smooth flow of the lesson. Provide constructive feedback to the assigned peer group leader after the online session to identify his or her actual strengths and improve on his or her weaknesses. In relation to this, the teacher or learning facilitator may further train and coach the group leader who has difficulties in delivering the lesson. Be online while the PGL session is going on to observe the group's activities and monitor the discussion. Join the discussion if needed to assist, correct, or coach the peer group leader if he or she seems to have difficulty in discussing the topic or facilitating the discussion. Provide further explanation or give more concrete examples for the learners to understand the concept or lesson better if needed. Give assignments if necessary after the PGL session is over, right before the learners log out of the online learning session. The assigned peer group leader is expected to be trained or coached by the teacher or learning facilitator for 10 minutes prior to the start of the discussion. He or she will be trained on tasks such as facilitating the group discussion and taking care of the online group, checking the attendance of his or her online group, leading the prayer, leading the exercise, or assigning another member to do it, recording the scores of the group in a record book or notebook, setting the rules for the online peer group discussion, such as when to turn the microphone or camera on and off, how to virtually raise hand or write in the chat box, and managing the group activities so that each member can hear or view and be heard or viewed online. Study the script prepared by the teacher or learning facilitator. Read the script during the online discussion using a tablet, laptop, or a desktop computer. Start the online session by asking the group, "Are you ready?" Proceed to the lesson proper after everyone has responded, following the script. Use the leader's book or key to corrections at the back of the SLM, if using the SLM as a guide in checking the answers of the group members to the questions raised, or exercises in the module emphasizing the value of honesty in checking their own work. Continue with the lesson by either assigning a member to read a portion of the lesson, then asking another member to continue, and so on, until the group arrives at answering some short quizzes. During the class, the same procedure is repeated until the group finishes the module. It is important for the leader to encourage all group members to participate in the discussion by asking them to read, provide reasons for their answers, and complete the tasks assigned to them. Peer group learning in an offline mode. During emergencies such as this pandemic, offline learning is the learning delivery which most schools conduct to provide continuing education. When learning from home, learners are provided printed modules which their parents pick up from schools or designated areas. These self-learning modules then become the primary learning materials of the children. Since face-to-face learning is not possible, employing self-learning or individual mode of learning would be applicable. In self-study, the learner becomes responsible for learning by himself or herself in a place conducive for studying the modules and completing the learning activities. An independent learner works through the modules and completes the module activities, exercises, and assessment tasks. Such print-based self-learning is advisable only if the learner is already a self-directed learner who can read, comprehend, and follow instructions in the modules by himself or herself. However, if the learner still needs help, then a parent, caregiver, or any member of the family, community volunteer, or the learner support aide can be trained as a learning partner to guide the pupil in studying the self-learning modules. This family member will handle the leader's book and/or the key to correction to be guided on the discussion points of the module's lessons. In addition, this family member checks the answers in the quizzes and exercises and keeps a record of the scores. These scores may be reported to the teacher or learning facilitator during the pickup of the next set of learning modules. For self-directed learners, they may check their own answers and record their own scores as long as they clearly imbibe the value of honesty. Apart from receiving records of pupil scores, the teacher or learning facilitator, when conducting an offline session using peer group learning, is expected to be aware of the learner's needs and concerns, and be able to respond promptly to communications and test results. Be aware of the learner's individual differences, such as learning style, abilities, interests, among others. Design contextualized or localized materials based on this awareness or knowledge. Provide reasonable feedback, monitor, and help the learners in their tasks. Monitor the progress of the learner through email, SMS, chat, or other messaging apps or home visitation, only if allowed, and all the health and safety protocols are strictly followed. Talk to parents or other responsible members of the family regarding problems the learner may be experiencing while doing self-learning. If possible, address the concerns raised by engaging the learner and the parents or other responsible members, caregivers of the family in solving the problem. Peer group learning in a blended mode. Peer group learning is a good learning strategy for blended learning. For the online approach of a PGL, the teacher or the learning facilitator can adopt the steps mentioned earlier. During periods of offline learning, other tasks can be assigned to the learners, such as working on assignments or projects or reviewing their self-learning module. These assignments, projects, or other tasks are given by the teachers after the online session, and a time period is allotted for their completion, usually in 2 or 3 days when online learning is not scheduled. In conducting the peer group learning in a blended mode, the teacher or learning facilitator should tailor the competency level of the lesson or topic for each learner based on abilities, interests, and learning needs and context. Assign various learning resources to be used in a blended learning environment for both traditional and online activities. Assist the learners through the entire process by giving them constructive feedback. Assist the learners experiencing difficulty doing the blended mode of learning using the same approach or kind of support that learners received from their teacher or learning facilitator during online or offline learning sessions. The impact learning materials and pedagogies can be used and adapted to support face-to-face, blended, and distance learning from grades 1 to 6 learners. The peer group learning as a pedagogy is also applicable for high school students in conjunction with self-learning modules. Secondary school teachers would need to give guidance to the students once they decided to adopt the peer group learning. This includes guiding them in using the self-learning modules or the ALS materials for secondary level as learning materials for peer group learning. The 7 impact principles applied in peer group learning. At this point, it is important for us to understand why we are using impacts and bundled strategies in the current emergency context. Tapping parents as peer group leaders aligns with the first principle of impact, that education is a shared responsibility among teachers, pupils, parents, or caregivers and community members. This principle is now fully evident in the collective provision of learning support to all children. Responsibility rests not just on the shoulders of the teachers and the school staff, but it is shared among other stakeholders. This is especially true among parents, since they are first teachers of their children. The community through the local officials also share in this endeavor by providing support to the schools and the parents. Private entities also do their part by donating learning tools, manipulatives, ICT equipment or digital materials, school supplies and other supplementary learning materials to be used by the learners for their online classes. The method adopted in peer group learning of assigning a group leader and rotating this role to other members also upholds that education is a process of developing socio-emotional and leadership skills, which is the second principle of impact. With peer group learning, students who are assigned as leaders have opportunities to develop their leadership skills, enhance their self-confidence, and work with others as a team. This then becomes an opportunity for social and emotional skills development. Peer group learning is anchored on the third principle of impact, that learning can take place anywhere, anytime, and anyhow. Even during this pandemic, learning continues among children in the safety of their houses through online, offline, and blended modes. Peer group learning demonstrates the fourth principle, which states that all school-aged children should have access to inclusive, quality education. At the onset of this pandemic and as classes were about to begin, many were apprehensive as to how classes will be delivered. Implementation issues seemed daunting, and many parents were worried about enrolling their children and suggested that the school year be suspended. But DepEd is committed to honoring its mandate of providing quality education despite the challenges. Education must continue. Using self-learning modules in the three modes of learning, remote, face-to-face, and blended, quality education is being provided to all school-aged children. The fifth principle emphasizes that a child-centered education uses contextualized learning materials aligned with 21st century curriculum. Considering the challenge of providing quality education during this pandemic, DepEd had to prioritize the most essential learning competencies, a condensed version of the K-12 curriculum. Self-learning modules were developed based on these MELCs, ensuring children's access to materials aligned with 21st century curriculum requirements. The sixth principle expounds that a more meaningful learning is lifelong, life-wide, life-deep, and life-wise. The experiences children gain as they participate in peer group learning and as they become peer leaders can be very meaningful for them. Such experiences help develop their self-confidence and leadership skills, positively impacting their lives and making them lifelong, life-wide, life-deep, and life-wise learners. The seventh principle promotes a paradigm that every teacher is a manager of the teaching-learning process. The role of teachers now has shifted from mere delivery agent of education content to more of a manager of a learning process. As a manager, the teacher sees to it that learning materials are complete and accessible, and that every learner can interface with the content of these materials in a manner that is active and engaging, and stimulating critical thinking, curiosity, creativity, and the love of learning. The teacher monitors the learning process as learners participate in peer group learning exercises and self-directed learning activities. The teacher's main tasks now are to train young group leaders on their roles and to effectively facilitate small group interaction, monitor learning progress, and identify and address individual learning gaps and needs. For more information about impact, a comprehensive guidebook that documents the different impact learning strategies, pedagogies, resources, and how they may be used in schools for grades 1 to 6 has been developed by CMU Initech. You may visit CMU Initech's website and download the Impact Guidebook for free.